of life in terms of where their career started. A lot of people don't know this about Alexander Burrows, but his start to his career was he started at the lowest possible low you could. He was a fourth liner in the ECHL when he started his career, and he signed 3 consecutive ECHL contracts before signing a deal with the Vancouver Canucks AHL team, which eventually led into his contract with the Canucks. So definitely, I agree with what you said there about sort of Burrows having the same mentality and having the same style of play as Gallagher, which will definitely help come next season. And I'm just going to go back to what I said earlier. I just think that Gallagher is the player that the Canadiens should make captain if Weber goes away, because I feel like he's the guy who's worked the hardest for their team and he's given the most to the team. Yes, I know that he's had his history with injuries and things like that, but he's proved that he can still play through it, and his style of play lends well to it and could kind of work in tandem with it in a way. And he was able to rebound from them pretty well, even with 2 broken hands, limiting him to just 10 goals in a loss. I believe it was the 2017-18 season. Oh, no, excuse me. It was the 2015-16 season when he only had 10 goals. And even then, he was still able to rebound, put up 31 goals for us in 2017-18, and he's just continued to improve since then. So yeah, I think Gallagher's honestly a lock to be the captain for now. And maybe down the line, who knows? Maybe a guy like Nick Suzuki could find his way into that captaincy and he could get that veteran leadership. And who knows? Maybe Mike Hoffman will be our captain one day. I mean, anything can happen at this point. But
yeah,
I feel like with everything that Gallagher has brought to this city and to this team, I feel like he is the player who has earned the right to be captain.
On a more serious note, Josh, let's do a quick recap. So we were questioning who should be the next Canadiens captain and when. Seems that everyone has the same opinion. It's going to be Brendan Gallagher. It's not going to happen this year. Might happen next year. Do you think, you know what, like history is kind of set in stone here, or maybe there's going to be a surprise candidate somewhere, or it's going to be like, yeah, forget it. We went around the barn a few times. You know, we're going to have 3 assistants this year. Gallagher is going to be named the season after, and then we're just going to run with that until the next guy comes around.
I think the nice thing about this team right now is that they just went to the Cup final. They're a young team, but they've got the experience, so they don't really need the big captain to be the leader. They've all got experience. You could see how well they bonded together when everyone was celebrating that Vegas win. This is a team that's grown together, and they don't really, I feel, need the big captain right now. They can roll with 3 assistants for a year or two and be fine. And then who knows? Like I love Brendan Gallagher. I think he's going to be the captain, but also a name, Caden Gooley. A lot of people are talking about him being captain material, very similar to Shea Weber in his leading style.
We're actually going to be talking about Gooley a little later on during this show. Sorry, continue.
No, yeah. So it's. I think Gallagher is a great guy. He's going to be captain, but then into after Gallagher, it's going to be interesting to see if Suzuki takes the step up, or if there's going to be Gooley or Caulfield or any of these young guys. Kotkaniemi can step up and become captain. It'll be a fun future.
Yeah, and I like what you say about, you know, we don't need a big captain. You know, they say like everyone has worked as a team, as we saw the last playoffs and everything. And Sam, for the last couple of minutes that we have for this segment, I'm going to ask you directly. I mean, does this seem like a team, though, that can continue on the same, I would say, I don't know, for lack of a leadership stretch, for lack of a better term, now that, you know, we lost Corey Perry, who was a huge part of this leadership group. Eric Stahl is nothing to trifle with, despite him having a rather forgettable run in Montreal. Forget Merrill and Gustafson. They were, you know, like, but what do you think? I mean, like, I want you to expand a little bit on what Josh was saying. Do you agree or disagree that, hey, you know what, we don't need that big captain. We got a strong enough leadership core to say we got what it takes and let's just run with it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Josh, you know, kudos to you that you're thinking about 10, 15 years down the road. I mean, I was talking about Ken Gould being the captain for Team Canada with the World Juniors. You're saying, well, he's got captaincy material. Okay, pump the brakes, Josh. Just hold it down. You know, that's a conversation for 2030 at least. But, you know, all kidding aside, I think what we saw from this team was the real amazing balance of the veterans in Weber, in Perry, in Stahl, and the young guys of Suzuki, Caulfield that really ignite that team, that give that fuse, that energy where guys were playing out of their minds. And Corey Perry and Armia and Stahl had some amazing games, whether it was against Toronto or Winnipeg or even Vegas. I mean, they were outstanding. And I don't think the fact that some of those guys are gone, I think Shea Weber's absence is going to be felt a little bit. But this is a team that you heard it. And Danault, I honestly, we haven't talked about Danault and the fact that he was a big part to, just those little pizza post-game press conferences after a series win. I mean, the guys loved him. I mean, he talked about Caulfield and they gave him props, and props says, yeah, you're pretty good too. You might not put the puck in the net, but you're doing everything else. And I think that you saw these guys really mature and grow much more than they would have had they got out in the first round or not made the playoffs. And I think that it's an established group. You have championship pedigrees in Tyler Toffoli and Edmondson. You bring in David Savard, who's won a cup. You bring in Paquette. You bring in guys that I think, Joel Edmondson, Jake Allen. I think there's a lot of guys that have been through the ringer, have won Stanley Cups. These guys have played, for the most part, I'd probably say 85, 90% of the team is remaining. You take Weber, Perry, Danault out, and Eric Stahl, who I guess was a throw-in, but those three guys who were there all season, take those guys out. They were a big part of the team, but they left an imprint on these guys that I think that is just going to start carrying over into this season. And that's why when we had this whole conversation last week with Elias about, are they a playoff team? And he was the only one that said no. And I'm just bringing it back. So if people didn't hear, you should go back and listen to last week's podcast. There's a reason this team is built to contend, is because they have the mentality from the leadership that was there that may not be there, but they have that imprint of being a winning team and knowing what it takes to win. And that's why I think that, you ride the 3As. You brought up Jeff Patrick. I think he's another outstanding candidate, but I just don't think he's, the type of candidate that I would choose instead of Brendan Gallagher. But him, Sherrod on the back end, Savard coming in. I mean, there's a lot of guys that I think are quality locker room guys, and the leadership is not going to be a problem.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm very, very glad that we actually agree on this. I mean, honestly, I think we got a really, really exciting team ahead of us, and you guys are all absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of underrated leadership, and you don't necessarily have to wear a letter on your jersey in order to be a leader, especially in a franchise as respectable and historical, for that matter, as the Montreal Canadiens. Guys, thank you very much for this segment. I want to give a special thank you to Sam Mendelsohn for joining us for this one. Sam, always a pleasure, man. Thanks a bunch. And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, the Prospect Heroes. Scott's Cowan and Sebastian. Hi. Normally it is the Scott and Sebastian show. Sebastian, unfortunately, not here. Well, I say unfortunately, but the guy's on vacation, man. The guy needs a break. So, let him have his fun. However, Sebastian, being the very dedicated man that he is, actually sent us a quick profile on Kaiden Guhle, and which is very interesting considering that Josh earlier was mentioning that Kaiden Guhle is a top candidate to become the captain for Team Canada the next the World Juniors. So let's hear what Sebastian has to say about that.
Kaiden Guhle is a really interesting case. His name has been making the rounds recently because of the possibility of him captaining the Canadian World Juniors team, which makes a lot of sense considering he is already the captain of the Prince Albert Raiders, and he was last season, even though he only played 2 games. And he is just known for being a really great leader. And he's a player that, because he was drafted a year ago, and it was a draft that I was really paying attention to. It was really the first draft that I was really analyzing deeply going into it. And he was the second highest name left on my board when Montreal picked. The only player I was higher on than Guhle that was left was actually Maverick Bourque, who fell to Dallas at 30, which I still think is absurd. But I did always like Guhle, and he's not necessarily a player that is beloved analytically. At least he wasn't in his draft year. And I really do put a lot of emphasis on analytics because it shows what happens when a player's on the ice, which is obviously very important. And eye test people always love Gooley because he's really big, right? He's like 6'3". He is heavy, and he's like a great skater. Like phenomenal mobility for his size, or actually, for his size, like makes it sound like almost minimizes it. He is just a phenomenal skater as is, and he is a player that I always enjoyed watching. Like I watched probably like 7 or 8 of his games going into his draft, and I loved watching him. It's really like he's a really, really fun defender to watch because he's phenomenal at defending the rush. Like his transition defense is already above NHL average for a defenseman, if you ask me. And he showed that in his 3 games with the Laval Rocket last season. He was the best transition defender on that team from what I saw. And he uses his skating ability to close gaps when like in the neutral zone and entering the blue line. And his stick work is phenomenal in those kinds of situations. And yeah, like his speed, everything, like his entire toolkit, he uses to its maximum potential when he's defending the transition. He's also a pretty good like in-zone defender, so he's good on the PK because he has an active stick, big body. He can like think like Sherratt or Edmondson, like in terms of like in-zone defense, right? Like he clears the front of the net. He has the size for it, but he's a phenomenal skater, and he can actually do things with the puck on his stick. Going into his draft year, though, the issue wasn't using his talents very well when the puck was on his stick. So the thing I always noticed going into the draft was that he would take the puck away against a rushing attacker, and he'd immediately give the puck right back when he's like launching a pass forward or trying to skate the puck out because his dangles just wouldn't work, and they didn't work in junior, and they certainly don't project very well for the pros. But the issue with him was just learning when to do what with the puck. It wasn't that he isn't able to be very good in transition, even offensively. It was just he did not pick his moments very well, and that decision-making improved a lot this season from what I saw. He was a lot smarter. So his transition defense was still phenomenal and fun to watch, but he was a lot smarter in picking his moments of when to go end-to-end with the puck, because he has the skating to do it. And his passing improved from what I saw. Again, it was a very limited sample if you combine World Juniors with 3 games in Laval and 2 games in WHL, but his decision-making just looked a lot better, which bodes very, very well. And yeah, so I think there's a really good chance that that he is indeed the captain for the World Junior team, because he's a very good defenseman, and especially in this will be his final season on the World Junior team, and he is going to be a big factor, right? Like he's going to play tough minutes, big minutes. He's going to have a big role, and he's already demonstrated himself as a leader, and his leadership capabilities have drawn many comparisons to a certain Shea Weber. And again, Shea Weber comparisons you should always take with a grain of salt, because Shea Weber is a one-of-a-kind defenseman. But in terms of leadership capabilities and demeanor, he does remind me a lot of Shea Weber. He has that same like stern and very serious personality, and he has that deep desire to win, and it really is very reminiscent of Shea Weber. So I think those comparisons are apt. In terms of on-ice play, they're very different players, though. Like Caden Gooley has a decent shot from the point, and he can score, but he'll score more of his goals not from a slap shot from the blue line, but like joining the rush and getting a snapshot off from the hash marks. He'll score a lot more that way than from the blue line, because he just doesn't have the trademarked Weber bomb.
because no one really does. But Weber, yeah, like in the offensive zone, very different players.